My name is Miriam Bennett, and am 32 years old. The moment my parents announced they were signing our family home over to me, I should have known peace wouldn't last. We were all gathered around the Thanksgiving table in Portland, the smell of roasted turkey still hanging in the air, when my sister Bethany suddenly shot to her feet. Her hands slammed against the oak table hard enough to rattle the wine glasses. "You get nothing," she screamed, her face twisted with rage I'd never seen before. "That house belongs to me." The room fell silent except for the sound of my mother's sharp intake of breath. My father froze mid-reach for his water glass, his hand trembling slightly from the stroke Head had years ago. Bethany's husband Gordon sat back in his chair with this cold smirk on his face, like he'd been expecting this explosion all along. Before we dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you've ever dealt with family drama over inheritance or felt betrayed by someone you trusted, this story is going to hit close to home. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe because what unfolded after that Thanksgiving dinner was a nightmare I never could have imagined. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this battle played out. Growing up, I was always the responsible daughter. While Bethany got whatever she wanted, I learned early that nothing would be handed to me. My parents, Judith and Leonard, raised us in a beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman house in Portland that's now worth about $750,000. Bethany, being 3 years older, always acted like she deserved the world simply for existing. She was the golden child who could do no wrong. While I quietly put myself through nursing school, working double shifts at the hospital just to pay tuition. When Bethany married Gordon 12 years ago, they moved into this massive house in Lake Oswego, constantly posting pictures of their supposedly perfect life on social media. Meanwhile, I was still renting a small apartment and building my career as a registered nurse. Everything changed 6 years ago when my father had his first stroke. Leonard was 65 at the time, and the stroke left him with limited mobility on his left side. He needed daily assistance with basic tasks like bathing, dressing, and physical therapy exercises. Around the same time, my mother Judith started showing early signs of dementia. She'd forget appointments, leave the stove on, get confused about what day it was. The doctors said she needed constant supervision to stay safe. I made the decision that would alter the course of my life completely. I moved back into my childhood home to become their full-time caregiver. I sacrificed promotions at work, turned down a relationship with a wonderful man who wanted me to move to Seattle with him, and basically put my entire life on hold. Bethany, on the other hand, visited maybe twice a year, always with elaborate excuses about how busy she was with Gordon's real estate business and their social calendar. For 6 years, I woke up at 5 in the morning to help Dad with his exercises before my nursing shift. I managed Mom's medications, took her to neurologist appointments, and stayed up late making sure she didn't wander at night. I cooked their meals, cleaned the house, handled their finances, and advocated for them with insurance companies. Bethany would occasionally call, but the conversations always circled back to her problems, her stress, her needs. She borrowed money from our parents repeatedly, promising to pay it back but never did. The total came to about $43,000 over the years. When I gently mentioned this to Mom and Dad, they just shook their heads sadly. They knew Bethany took advantage, but parents have a hard time accepting their children's flaws. 3 months before that fateful Thanksgiving, my parents called me into the living room for a serious conversation. Leonard held Judith's hand as he spoke, his words still slightly slurred from the stroke. "Miriam, we've been talking to our attorney, Preston Walsh. We want to sign the house over to you." I started to protest, but Mom squeezed my hand. "You've given up so much for us, honey. You've been here every single day, through every hard moment. This house should be yours. You've earned it." They explained that the legal documents were already prepared and they wanted to make the transfer official. They planned to announce it to the family at Thanksgiving so everyone understood their decision. I felt overwhelmed with gratitude but also a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I knew exactly how Bethany would react. Bethany had always assumed she'd inherit everything as the firstborn. She made comments over the years about her plans for when we get the house, talking about selling it immediately and splitting the money. She never once considered that it'd been sacrificing my life to care for our parents while she posted vacation photos from Hawaii. She lived in her bubble of entitlement, completely blind to reality. The document signing was scheduled for the Monday after Thanksgiving. My parents wanted to share the news with dignity, explaining their reasoning to the whole family. They hoped Bethany would understand, would see the fairness in their decision. Looking back, we were all incredibly naive about what was coming. Thanksgiving Day started tense. Bethany and Gordon arrived an hour late, which wasn't unusual, but Bethany seemed irritated from the moment she walked through the door. She made passive-aggressive comments about the food, about how the house looked dated, about how she was so exhausted from her busy life. We all sat down for dinner around 3 in the afternoon. Our extended family was there too: Aunt Corinne, Uncle Randall, and a few cousins. Dad cleared his throat and began his prepared speech about gratitude and family. Then he said it. Judith and I have decided to sign the house over to Miriam. She's been our rock for 6 years, and we want her to have this home. The words were barely out of his mouth before Bethany exploded. She shot up so fast her chair tipped backward and crashed to the floor. "You get nothing," she screamed at me, her finger jabbing in my direction. "That house belongs to me. I'm the oldest. I'm the one who should inherit." Her face turned red, veins bulging in her neck. "You manipulated them. You kept them away from me. You brainwashed them into giving you everything." Gordon stood up too, placing a hand on her shoulder in this theatrical gesture of support. "Now, Bethany, let's stay calm," he said in this oily voice, but his eyes were cold and calculating. "I think what Bethany means is that perhaps Judith and Leonard aren't in the best mental state to make such significant decisions. Miriam has had considerable influence over them." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Influence? I've been here taking care of them. Where have you been, Bethany? Where were you when Dad had his second small stroke last year? Where were you when Mom got lost walking to the mailbox and I had to search the neighborhood for 2 hours? My voice was shaking, but I kept going. "I've bathed Dad when he couldn't do it himself. I've cleaned up Mom's accidents. I've sat in emergency rooms at 2 in the morning. I've canceled plans, lost relationships, and put my entire life on hold. What have you sacrificed?" Bethany grabbed her wine glass and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, red wine dripping down the wallpaper like blood. "You're a conniving, pathetic gold digger," she shrieked. "You moved in here to steal my inheritance. You've been planning this for years." Mom started crying, her hands shaking. Dad tried to stand up but couldn't manage it, his face turning dangerously red. I rushed to check his blood pressure, terrified he'd have another stroke right there. Aunt Corinne attempted to intervene, suggesting everyone calm down and discuss this reasonably, but Bethany was beyond reason. Gordon stepped forward, and this was when I realized how truly dangerous this situation was. He spoke in this measured, reasonable tone that somehow made his words more threatening. "I think we need to have a family meeting with a lawyer present. We need to ensure that Judith and Leonard are mentally competent to make this decision. Given Judith's dementia diagnosis and Leonard's stroke history, there are serious questions about their capacity. Miriam has had undue influence over them, controlling who they see and what information they receive. We may need to pursue conservatorship to protect them." He looked directly at me with this cold smile. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." Bethany grabbed her purse, knocking over a picture frame in the process. "You'll regret this," she hissed at me. "I'll make sure you regret ever thinking you could steal what's mine." She stormed toward the door with Gordon following. Before leaving, she turned back to our parents. "You've chosen her over me. Fine, but don't come crying to me when she puts you in some horrible nursing home and takes everything you have." The door slammed so hard the windows rattled. The rest of the family sat in shocked silence for a moment before Aunt Corinne and Uncle Randall made awkward excuses and left quickly. They didn't want to get caught in the middle of this war. I spent the rest of the evening comforting my sobbing mother and monitoring my father's blood pressure, which had spiked to dangerous levels. They kept apologizing, saying they never meant to cause such a rift in the family. I reassured them they'd done nothing wrong, that they had every right to make this decision, but inside I felt a growing sense of dread. The look in Gordon's eyes, the calculation behind Bethany's rage, told me this was just the beginning. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Bethany's threat. "You'll regret this." I had no idea how much she meant those words. Friday morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. I grabbed it groggily and saw dozens of notifications from Facebook, Instagram, and text messages. My stomach dropped. Bethany had posted a long, detailed post on Facebook about elder abuse happening right under everyone's noses. She claimed I had isolated our parents from their family and friends, that I controlled all their finances, and that I was manipulating vulnerable seniors for financial gain. She wrote about how Mom and Dad used to be so happy before I took over their lives and now they were shadows of their former selves. She posted old photos from family gatherings years ago, captioning them before Miriam destroyed our family and when Mom and Dad were still allowed to see their real family. Gordon shared the posts immediately, adding his own commentary about how concerned he was for Judith and Leonard's well-being. He wrote about warning signs of elder abuse and how family members need to protect vulnerable seniors from exploitation. Within hours, the posts had been shared dozens of times. Distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years were commenting with shock and concern. Some immediately took Bethany's side, writing things like "I always knew something was wrong and poor Bethany must be devastated." My phone exploded with messages from cousins, family, friends, and even neighbors asking what was going on. The whispers started immediately. When I took Mom to her hair appointment on Saturday, the stylist gave me this weird look and was oddly quiet. At the grocery store, I ran into a woman from my parents' church who actually crossed to the other aisle to avoid me. My nursing supervisor, Dr. Felicity Ross, called me into her office Monday morning. Someone had sent an anonymous complaint to the hospital questioning my character and suggesting I might be taking advantage of vulnerable patients if I was allegedly abusing my own parents. Dr. Ross didn't believe it, thank goodness, but she had to document the complaint in my file. The humiliation burned in my chest. I tried to defend myself online, posting a factual response explaining the 6 years I'd spent caregiving. I detailed the daily tasks, the medical appointments, the sacrifices. But Bethany's friends swarmed the comments section, attacking me viciously. They called me a liar, accused me of gaslighting, and claimed I was only making things worse by attacking a concerned daughter. Some people I'd known since childhood were liking Bethany's posts and ignoring mine. I realized I was losing the public opinion battle badly. The court of social media had already convicted me. After 2 days of trying to combat the lies, I deleted all my social media accounts. I couldn't handle seeing the accusations and the hatred anymore, but deleting my accounts just made me look guilty, like I was hiding something. Saturday afternoon, a certified letter arrived. My hands shook as I opened it. It was from an attorney named Horace Whitman, representing Bethany and Gordon. The letter was full of legal language that basically questioned whether my parents were mentally competent to make decisions about their property. It threatened conservatorship proceedings, suggesting that Judith and Leonard needed independent evaluation by qualified medical professionals to determine their capacity. The letter strongly implied that I had committed financial exploitation and emotional abuse. It demanded that I provide complete financial records, showing how I'd spent any of my parents' money, and that I allow neutral third parties to evaluate the living situation. I sat on the couch staring at that letter for 20 minutes, my mind racing. This was really happening. Bethany wasn't just angry. She was coming after me with everything she had. I called our family attorney, Preston Walsh, but it was Saturday evening and I only got his voicemail. I left an urgent message asking him to call me back as soon as possible. Then I spent hours online researching elder law, conservatorship proceedings, and what rights I had. The more I read, the more terrified I became. Even though the allegations were completely false, defending myself would be expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. The process itself could be harmful to my parents. I barely slept that weekend. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Bethany's rage-filled face and heard her screaming, "You get nothing." I kept checking my phone obsessively, worried about what she'd post next or who else she'd turn against me. Mom noticed my distress and kept asking what was wrong, but I didn't want to upset her more. Dad could tell something was seriously wrong. Monday morning, he gripped my hand with his good hand and said, "Don't let her do this to you, Miriam. That house is yours. You earned it. We won't let Bethany take that away." His words gave me strength, but I could see the toll this was taking on both my parents. The guilt they felt was written all over their faces, and I hated Bethany for putting them through this stress. Tuesday morning of the second week, I was helping Mom with her medication when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a serious-looking woman in her 50s holding an official badge. Bonnie Fletcher from Adult Protective Services. We received a report of possible neglect and abuse of the residents at this address. I need to come in and conduct an investigation. My blood ran cold. I knew immediately that Bethany had filed a false report, but I had no choice. I had to let this woman into our home, had to allow her to interrogate my parents, had to prove that I wasn't the monster my sister was painting me to be. Bonnie was professional but thorough. She walked through every room of the house, checking cleanliness, safety hazards, and living conditions. She opened the refrigerator to verify we had adequate food. She examined the bathroom for grab bars and safety equipment. She checked the medications to ensure they were properly stored and labeled. She asked to see medical records, appointment schedules, and any documentation of my parents' care. I provided everything she requested, my hands shaking as I pulled out folders of paperwork I'd meticulously kept over the years. Every doctor's visit, every prescription, every therapy session was documented. Then Bonnie needed to interview my parents separately. She took Dad into his bedroom first, while I waited in the kitchen with Mom, who was getting increasingly agitated and confused about why this stranger was in our house. When it was Mom's turn, I could hear her through the door getting upset, her voice rising in that panicky way she got when her dementia made her disoriented. "Where's Miriam? I want Miriam. Who are you? Why are you asking me these things?" I wanted to burst in there and comfort her, but I knew I couldn't interfere with the investigation. When Bonnie finally finished, Dad's blood pressure had spiked again, and Mom was crying, completely disoriented. I gave Bonnie my own statement, explaining the 6 years of care, the daily routine, the sacrifices I'd made. I showed her my nursing credentials to demonstrate I was qualified to provide care. I gave her contact information for Dr. Felicity Ross, for Dad's neurologist Dr. Hugo Barnes, and for Mom's primary care physician Dr. Camille Grant. I provided names of neighbors who could attest to my dedication. Bonnie spent the next 2 days calling these references and reviewing the medical records. My neighbor Estelle Murphy from next door told Bonnie that I was the most devoted daughter she'd ever seen. Graham Tucker from across the street corroborated that I'd been the only family member consistently present for years. When Bonnie returned on Thursday, she had her final assessment. Mrs. Bennett, I found zero evidence of abuse or neglect. Your parents are well cared for, the home is clean and safe, and all medical needs are being met appropriately. This case will be closed as unfounded. I suspect this report was filed as part of a family dispute over inheritance rather than genuine concern for the residents' welfare. Relief flooded through me, but it was mixed with rage. Bethany had put our parents through this traumatic investigation just to harass me. She'd weaponized a system designed to protect vulnerable seniors. That same day, Bethany posted on social media that the system failed our parents. She claimed that Adult Protective Services was incompetent and that I must have manipulated the investigation somehow. The comments filled with people expressing outrage at APS for not protecting Judith and Leonard. Meanwhile, I started getting threatening text messages from Bethany's phone. You think you won? This is just the beginning. I'll make you pay for poisoning them against me. You'll wish you never moved into that house. I saved every message, documenting the harassment. Gordon had apparently contacted 3 more attorneys, shopping around for one who would take an aggressive approach to challenging the property transfer. He was telling people that he had insider information about my financial crimes against my parents. The stress was affecting every aspect of my life. I developed terrible migraine headaches that lasted for days. I couldn't sleep more than 3 or 4 hours a night. I lost 12 pounds in 2 weeks because I had no appetite. The comments filled with people expressing outrage at APS for not protecting Judith and Leonard. Meanwhile, I started getting threatening text messages from Bethany's phone. You think you won. This is just the beginning. I'll make you pay for poisoning them against me. You'll wish you never moved into that house. I saved every message, documenting the harassment. Gordon had apparently contacted 3 more attorneys, shopping around for one who would take an aggressive approach to challenging the property transfer. He was telling people that he had insider information about my financial crimes against my parents. The stress was affecting every aspect of my life. I developed terrible migraine headaches that lasted for days. I couldn't sleep more than 3 or 4 hours a night. I lost 12 pounds in 2 weeks because I had no appetite. That house is yours, and we won't let you surrender it. Mom, in one of her clearer moments, added, Bethany made her choices, honey. She chose not to be here. You chose love. Love deserves to win. Week 3 began with a financial nightmare. I stopped at the ATM to withdraw cash for groceries and got an error message. I tried my debit card at the store and it was declined. Panicking, I called my bank from the parking lot. The representative informed me that my account had been frozen due to a fraud investigation. Bethany had filed a claim alleging that I had stolen money from our parents' account and deposited it into mine. The bank had to freeze my account, pending investigation into the allegations. I couldn't access my own money, couldn't pay my bills, couldn't buy food. I had to use credit cards for everything, borrowing from Willa just to make it through the week. Then things got worse. My credit cards started getting declined too. I checked my accounts online and discovered they'd been maxed out with fraudulent charges. Someone had used my information to make thousands of dollars in purchases at stores I'd never been to. Worse, new credit cards had been opened in my name without my knowledge. My credit score was plummeting because of the sudden debt and missed payments. I realized with horror that Bethany must have stolen my personal information years ago, maybe during one of her visits, and had been sitting on it waiting for the perfect moment to destroy me financially. The employment threat came next. An anonymous letter was sent to the hospital administration claiming I had a substance abuse problem and was stealing medications from the supply room. The allegations were completely fabricated, but hospital policy required a full investigation. I was called into a meeting with hospital leadership, HR, and the pharmacy director. They informed me that I would need to undergo mandatory drug testing and that I was being placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of their investigation. I would lose 2 weeks of pay, and the accusation would be in my permanent employment file even if I was cleared. The humiliation of sitting in that room, being questioned about drug use by colleagues I'd worked with for 8 years, was one of the lowest moments of my life. Gordon was using his business connections to make my life hell in every possible way. He contacted the landlord situation, which was complicated because technically Mom and Dad still owned the house even though they'd promised it to me. He started spreading rumors to my parents' doctors that I was preventing them from receiving proper care. He contacted Medicare suggesting there was billing fraud happening. Every day brought a new attack, a new accusation, a new crisis to deal with. I was drowning in a sea of false allegations and malicious rumors, spending all my time and energy defending myself instead of living my life. Finally, I met with Preston Walsh, our family attorney. He listened to everything that had happened, taking detailed notes. Then he looked at me seriously and said, "Miriam, what Bethany and Gordon are doing is illegal. This is harassment, defamation, identity theft, and fraud. You need to fight back." We filed a police report for identity theft and fraud. We began documenting every single attack for a harassment case. Preston filed a motion for a restraining order hearing. We also hired a private investigator named Silas Montgomery to gather evidence on Bethany and Gordon's activities and motivations. The drug test came back clean, of course, and the hospital investigation found no evidence whatsoever of medication theft. But the damage was done. My colleagues looked at me differently. Some were supportive, but others seemed to wonder if maybe there was something to the accusations. I returned to work after my forced leave, but the joy I used to feel in my nursing career was gone. Every shift felt like I was under a microscope, like one mistake would confirm everyone's worst suspicions. My parents' health was declining rapidly from the stress. Dad's blood pressure was dangerously high despite medication adjustments. Had become withdrawn and depressed, barely speaking some days. Mom's confusion was getting worse. She had more bad days than good now, sometimes not recognizing Dad or me. Her neurologist, Dr. Grant, warned me that extreme stress could accelerate the progression of her dementia. Every time I looked at my parents' suffering faces, I hated Bethany more. She was destroying her own parents' health in her quest to hurt me. One evening after a particularly brutal day, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot after my shift and just cried. I sobbed until I couldn't breathe, all the stress and pain and exhaustion pouring out. I questioned everything. Was fighting for this house worth what it was costing me? Worth what it was costing my parents? Maybe I should just walk away, let Bethany have what she wanted, and find peace somewhere else. But when I got home, Mom and Dad were waiting up for me. Dad took my hand and said, "We're in this together, sweetheart. You're not alone." Mom, in one of her clearer moments, added, "Don't let her win, Miriam. Bad people win when good people give up." Their words reminded me why I was fighting. This wasn't just about a house. It was about standing up to bullying, to lies, to people who thought they could destroy you just because they felt entitled to what you had. The tide began to turn in week 5 when I received an unexpected phone call. Aunt Corinne, my mother's younger sister, called me one evening sounding upset. "Miriam, I need to apologize. I should have stood up for you from the beginning, but I was trying to stay neutral. I was wrong." She explained that Bethany had contacted her, trying to recruit her to join in contesting the will and challenging the property transfer. Bethany had painted this elaborate picture of me as a manipulative villain who had brainwashed our parents. Corinne had listened politely, then said she needed time to think about it. Instead, she started asking questions, doing her own investigation. What Corinne discovered changed everything. Bethany and Gordon were in serious financial trouble. Their house in Lake Oswego was in foreclosure. Gordon's real estate company was failing, and they were drowning in debt. That's why they desperately needed the inheritance money. It wasn't about the house having sentimental value or Bethany caring about our parents. It was pure greed and desperation. Corinne told me. Bethany admitted to me that she planned to sell the house immediately if she got it. She said your parents don't need that much space anyway and could live in a smaller place. She was already shopping around for buyers. The betrayal was stunning, but it also gave me ammunition. Silas Montgomery, the private investigator, had been busy too. His findings were explosive. Gordon's real estate company was under federal investigation for fraud related to property flipping schemes. Bethany and Gordon owed the IRS $320,000 in back taxes. Bank records showed that Bethany had been gambling heavily online, losing over $60,000 in just the past year. Phone records and emails revealed that they'd been planning for months to force our parents into a nursing home, sell the house, and keep all the money for themselves. They saw Judith and Leonard as obstacles to be managed, not parents to be loved and cared for. Preston Walsh compiled all this evidence and filed a comprehensive harassment lawsuit against Bethany and Gordon. The documentation was devastating: threatening text messages, false reports to multiple agencies, defamatory social media posts, identity theft, fraud. Every attack that made on me was documented with dates, times, and evidence. The lawsuit sought damages for emotional distress, financial losses, and legal fees. More importantly, Preston filed for a restraining order, arguing that Bethany and Gordon posed a threat to my safety and my parents' well-being. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. In the meantime, Judge Warner granted a temporary restraining order requiring Bethany and Gordon to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my parents, and the house. They were prohibited from contacting me directly or through third parties. The order was served on a Wednesday afternoon. By Friday evening, Bethany had violated it. A neighbor called me to say she'd seen Bethany driving slowly past the house multiple times, stopping to take photos. I immediately called the police and filed a report. The violation was documented, which would strengthen our case for the permanent restraining order. Something else shifted during this time. The community started to see through Bethany's lies. A local news outlet picked up the story after Bethany made yet another inflammatory public post. A reporter reached out to interview me. And while I initially didn't want the publicity, Preston advised that telling my side of the story could help. The resulting article was fair and balanced. It included interviews with neighbors Estelle Murphy and Graham Tucker, who spoke powerfully about my dedication to my parents. It included statements from my parents, doctors confirming excellent care. The article also mentioned the financial troubles Bethany and Gordon were facing, raising questions about their true motivations. The church congregation where my parents had been members for 30 years learned the truth from Aunt Corinne, who attended the same church. The pastor, Reverend Sullivan Hayes, visited our home to express support and apologize for any members who had judged me unfairly. He brought a casserole and a card signed by dozens of congregation members. Social media started to turn too. People who had initially believed Bethany's posts began questioning her narrative. Comments appeared on her posts asking why she hadn't been helping with her parents' care if she was so concerned about them. Some of her own friends started distancing themselves as the truth emerged. I felt strength returning. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Aunt Corinne visited regularly, bringing meals and offering to sit with mom and dad so I could have breaks. Willa organized a rotation of nursing colleagues who dropped by to check on my parents and give me support. The weight I'd been carrying alone was distributed across shoulders of people who genuinely cared. I realized that Bethany's smear campaign had actually revealed who my true friends and allies were. The people who believed her lies without asking questions weren't worth having in my life anyway. Most importantly, I made the decision to see this fight through to the end. No more considering surrender. No more sleepless nights wondering if I should just give up. Bethany had tried to destroy me, had attacked my character, my finances, my career, and my mental health. She'd put our parents through hell because of her greed and entitlement. I was going to make sure she faced consequences for every single thing she'd done. The permanent restraining order hearing was coming, and I was ready for battle. The permanent restraining order hearing arrived in week 6. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that made everything feel stark and official. Judge Marlene Goodwin presided, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I sat at one table with Preston Walsh, my hands clenched together to keep them from shaking. Bethany and Gordon sat at the other table with their attorney, Horace Whitman, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit who kept whispering to them and shuffling papers. My parents sat in the gallery behind me. Dad had insisted on coming despite his health issues, saying he needed to support me. Aunt Corinne sat beside them, holding Mom's hand because Mom was confused about where we were and why. Willa had taken the day off work to be there too. Across the aisle, I noticed that Bethany and Gordon sat alone. No supporters, no friends, no other family members. That spoke volumes. Horace Whitman presented Bethany's case first. He painted her as a concerned daughter trying desperately to protect her elderly parents from an opportunistic younger sister. He argued that Miriam had systematically isolated Judith and Leonard, controlling their access to family and manipulating them for financial gain. He suggested that I had something called Munchausen by proxy, keeping my parents sick and dependent so I could play the hero and secure the inheritance. He claimed the restraining order was actually a tool I was using to further isolate my parents from their loving eldest daughter. His presentation was smooth and practiced, designed to make Bethany look like a victim. The problem was, he had absolutely no evidence. Everything he said was speculation and accusation. When Judge Goodwin asked for documentation supporting these claims, Whitman fumbled through papers and produced nothing substantial. No medical records showing neglect, no financial records showing theft, no witness testimony corroborating abuse. It was all smoke and mirrors. I watched the judge's expression grow increasingly skeptical as Whitman talked in circles, trying to make serious allegations sound credible without any proof to back them up. Then it was Preston's turn, and he was devastating. He started with my background as a registered nurse, emphasizing my medical training and expertise in patient care. He presented 6 years of meticulously documented medical records showing that both Judith and Leonard received excellent care under my guardianship. Their doctors submitted written statements confirming that my parents' health had actually improved in some ways due to consistent care and medication management. Dr. Hugo Barnes wrote that Leonard's condition had stabilized remarkably well considering the severity of his stroke, thanks to regular physical therapy and proper medical oversight. Dr. Camille Grant noted that Judith's dementia progression had been slower than expected, likely due to structured routines and constant supervision. Preston then presented the financial documentation. He showed that I had actually spent my own nursing salary supporting the household. I'd paid for groceries, utilities, home repairs, and supplemental care supplies out of my pocket. The only money I'd received from my parents was rent for my room, which was well below market rate and completely appropriate. In contrast, he presented evidence of Bethany borrowing $43,000 from our parents over the years without repayment. He showed that every penny of my parents' money had been accounted for and spent appropriately on their care and needs. Then came the evidence of harassment. Preston walked the judge through every attack chronologically. The social media defamation campaign, with printed screenshots of Bethany's posts, and the hundreds of hateful comments they generated. The false APS report, and the traumatic investigation it triggered. The identity theft and financial fraud, including bank statements showing the fraudulent charges and credit reports showing the damage to my credit score. The false allegations to my employer that resulted in forced administrative leave. The threatening text messages, dozens of them, showing escalating anger and promises of revenge. The violation of the temporary restraining order with photos from the neighbor showing Bethany's car parked in front of our house. Silas Montgomery testified about his investigation findings. He laid out Bethany and Gordon's financial situation in stark detail. The house in foreclosure, the failing business, the IRS debt, the gambling losses. He presented email evidence showing they'd been planning to force our parents into the cheapest nursing home we can find and sell the house as quickly as possible. He testified that multiple real estate agents had been contacted about listing the property before our parents had even agreed to sign it over to anyone. The testimonies from medical professionals were powerful. Dr. Felicity Ross from the hospital spoke about my character and work ethic, confirming the drug test had been completely clean and the investigation had found zero evidence of any wrongdoing. Sawyer Brennan, Dad's physical therapist, testified that had never seen a more dedicated family caregiver in his 20-year career. Lucille Frank, a home health aide who sometimes helped with Mom, stated that the home environment was loving, clean, and properly managed. Throughout all this testimony, I watched Bethany's face grow redder and redder. Her hands gripped the armrests of her chair until her knuckles turned white. Gordon kept touching her arm, whispering to her to stay calm, but I could see her fury building like a pressure cooker about to explode. When Preston showed the email where Bethany had written they don't have much time left anyway, why waste money on fancy care? Mom actually gasped from the gallery and started crying. Dad's hand tightened on his cane, his face a mask of pain and disappointment. Judge Goodwin asked if Bethany or Gordon wanted to testify in their own defense. Horace Whitman advised against it, but Bethany couldn't help herself. She demanded to speak, brushing off both Whitman's and Gordon's attempts to stop her. She took the stand looking righteous and angry, ready to finally tell her truth. Preston didn't even have to work hard during cross-examination. He simply let her talk. That house should be mine. Bethany practically screamed. I'm the oldest. I'm the one who deserves it. Our parents always loved Miriam more, always favored her, and now they're giving her everything. Judge Goodwin asked about the 6 years Miriam spent caregiving. She didn't have to do that. Nobody asked her to move in. She did it to manipulate them, to make them feel obligated to give her the house. The judge asked about Bethany's own visits to her parents. I was busy. I have a life, a marriage, responsibilities. I couldn't just drop everything like Miriam did. She had nothing else going on anyway. Preston asked calmly, Mrs. Gordon, you testified that you were concerned about your parents' welfare. Can you tell the court how often you visited them in the past year? Bethany hesitated. I don't know exactly. A few times. Preston pulled out phone records. According to your parents' phone records, you called them 6 times in the past year. You visited them twice. Once for 3 hours on Easter, and once for 2 hours on your father's birthday. Is that accurate? Bethany's face flushed. I was busy, and Miriam made it difficult. She scheduled things when she knew I couldn't come. Did you ever ask Miriam to adjust the schedule? Did you ever offer to take your parents to their medical appointments? Did you ever offer to help with their care in any way? Preston's voice remained gentle but firm. Bethany sputtered. Well, no. But that's because I knew she wouldn't let me. Preston showed the judge text message records proving I had invited Bethany to appointments multiple times and declined, or simply not responded. Then Preston asked the question that destroyed her. Mrs. Gordon, what were your plans for the house if you inherited it? Bethany's attorney objected, but the judge allowed the question. Bethany, too angry to think strategically, answered honestly, I plan to sell it. That house is worth over $700,000. That's my inheritance. I need that money. We need that money. Do you know how much we owe? She realized her mistake too late. We're in debt because of Gordon's business problems, because of bad luck, because everything went wrong. We deserve that money to fix our lives. Preston pressed further. And what about your parents? Where would they live? Bethany's mask finally fell away completely. We'd put them in a nursing home. A decent one, of course, but something affordable. They don't need that whole big house anyway. They're old, they're sick, they don't have much time left anyway. Why should we waste money on expensive care when they're going to die soon anyway? That house should go to family who can actually use it. The courtroom went silent. Mom was sobbing openly in the gallery. Dad looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Aunt Curran put her arms around both of them. Even Judge Goodwin looked shocked. Bethany seemed to realize what she'd just said, her face going pale. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant that it's practical, that's all. We'd make sure they were comfortable, but the damage was done. She'd revealed exactly who she was and what she valued. Gordon tried to do damage control, but Judge Goodwin had heard enough. She called for a brief recess, then returned with her ruling. The permanent restraining order was granted immediately. Bethany and Gordon were required to stay at least 500 feet from me, from Judith and Leonard, and from the property at all times. They were prohibited from any direct or indirect contact. Any violation would result in immediate arrest and jail time. Furthermore, Judge Goodwin stated for the record that she was referring the case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to the identity theft, fraud, and false reporting. She also ordered Bethany and Gordon to pay my legal fees, which totaled $18,000. Before we left the courtroom, my parents asked to speak. Judge Goodwin allowed it, though it was unusual. Leonard stood up with difficulty, leaning heavily on his cane, but his voice was clear and strong. Your Honor, my wife and I would like to state for the record that we are removing Bethany Gordon from our will entirely. Everything we have will go to Miriam. This is our decision, made with sound mind and without any undue influence. We're heartbroken by what we've learned today about our eldest daughter's true feelings, but we will not reward greed and cruelty. Judith, despite her confusion, nodded in agreement. Bethany screamed. It was an inhuman sound, full of rage and disbelief. You can't do this. That's not fair. I'm your daughter. You can't just give her everything. Security officers moved toward her as she continued screaming obscenities. Gordon tried to pull her away, but she lunged toward our table. You destroyed my family, Miriam. I'll never forgive you. You took everything from me. The bailiffs physically restrained her and escorted her from the courtroom. Her screams echoed down the hallway even after the doors closed. I sat there shaking, tears streaming down my face. It was over. We'd won, but the victory felt hollow because of the cost. My sister, despite all her flaws, was still my sister. Watching her be dragged from the courtroom screaming was one of the most painful moments of my life. Preston squeezed my shoulder. You did the right thing, Miriam. Standing up to bullies is never easy, but it's always necessary. My parents came over and we held each other, all of us crying. Aunt Corinne and Willa joined the hug. We stood there in that courtroom, holding each other up, a chosen family bonded by love rather than blood obligation. The weeks following the hearing brought a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The district attorney's office moved forward with criminal charges against Gordon for identity theft and fraud, multiple felony counts that carried serious penalties. Bethany was charged with filing false reports and harassment. The prosecutor offered them a plea deal: full restitution to me for all damages, 3 years probation, mandatory counseling, and community service. Gordon took the deal immediately, his attorney advising him that a jury would crucify him given the evidence. Bethany refused initially, insisting she wanted her day in court, convinced a jury would see things her way. Meanwhile, the financial collapse of their lives accelerated. The foreclosure on their Lake Oswego house went through. They lost everything, the house selling at auction for far less than they owed. Gordon's real estate company declared bankruptcy, the federal fraud investigation making it impossible to continue operations. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Gresham, a dramatic fall from their former lifestyle. Bethany's social media, once full of vacation photos and humble brags about their perfect life, went dark. The friends who used to comment on every post disappeared. Nobody wants to associate with people facing criminal charges. The extended family fractured over what happened. A few relatives, including old Uncle Lester and cousin Daphne, still blamed me somehow. They muttered about how I should have just shared the house with Bethany, how family should work things out privately. But most of the family, once they learned the full truth, supported me completely. Aunt Corinne became a regular visitor to the house, coming over twice a week to help with Mom and Dad's care and to give me breaks. She felt guilty, she said, for not standing up to Bethany sooner. Uncle Randall apologized for leaving so quickly after that disastrous Thanksgiving, admitting he'd been a coward for not wanting to get involved. Christmas approached, the first major holiday since the courtroom drama. The thought of celebrating without Bethany felt surreal. She'd always been at every Christmas dinner my entire life, despite her flaws. Mom sometimes forgot what had happened because of her dementia, asking when Bethany would arrive. Each time I had to remind her, she'd get sad all over again, grieving the loss of her daughter anew. Dad never forgot though. He went through a period of deep depression, sitting in his chair for hours staring at old photo albums, mourning the daughter he thought he knew. His therapist said it was like grieving a death, except the person was still alive, just dead to us. I struggled with complicated emotions too. Yes, Bethany had tried to destroy me. Yes, she'd shown her true colors in the most horrific way. But she was still the person I'd grown up with. Had taught me to ride a bike, had helped me with homework sometimes, had been my sister for 32 years. The relationship had always been difficult, had always involved elements of jealousy and competition, but I'd never imagined it ending like this. Some nights, I'd lie awake thinking about whether there had been some other way to handle everything, some path that wouldn't have led to such complete destruction of our family bond. My therapist, Alma Fitzpatrick, helped me work through the guilt and grief, reminding me that I hadn't chosen this battle, Bethany had. Bethany's downward spiral continued. Gordon filed for divorce 3 months after the conviction, had taken the plea deal and started rebuilding his life, distancing himself from Bethany and her increasingly erratic behavior. The divorce was quick and ugly, with Gordon walking away from their marriage as fast as legally possible. Bethany was left completely alone, working a minimum wage retail job at a discount store, living in a studio apartment, bitter and convinced everyone had conspired against her. She still maintained she was the victim, posting occasional rants on social media from public library computers about family betrayal and injustice. The attempts to reach out continued sporadically. Bethany tried sending letters to the house through other people, violating the restraining order indirectly. She showed up at church once when she knew my parents would be there, causing such a scene that the congregation asked her to leave and the pastor called the police. She contacted distant relatives trying to spread her version of events, But most people had heard the truth by then. Aunt Corinne reported that Bethany had called her multiple times begging for money, claiming she was broke and desperate. Corinne refused, telling Bethany she needed to take responsibility for her choices. Meanwhile, the legal transfer of the house was finally completed. After months of delays due to the harassment and legal challenges, the property was officially signed over to me. I sat in Preston Walsh's office as he handed me the final documents showing Miriam Louise Bennett as the sole owner of the property worth $750,000. I stared at my name on those papers, feeling overwhelmed. This house represented so much more than money or assets. It represented 6 years of sacrifice, of choosing love over convenience, of staying when leaving would have been easier. It represented the validation that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, matters. I used some of my savings to refinance and renovate, making the house more accessible for my parents. We installed a walk-in bathtub, so Dad could bathe safely. We widened doorways for potential wheelchair access. We added ramps at the entrances. We updated Mom's bedroom with safety features to prevent her from wandering at night during confused episodes. The house became a true sanctuary designed around their needs. For the first time in months, I felt like we could breathe. The constant attacks had stopped. The harassment had ended. We could finally just live. My career recovered too. After everything was settled legally, I was promoted to a nursing supervisor position at the hospital. Dr. Felicity Ross advocated strongly for me, saying I'd shown extraordinary grace under pressure. The promotion came with better pay and more regular hours, which meant I could afford to hire a part-time caregiver named Geneva Palmer to help with my parents during my work shifts. Geneva was wonderful with both Mom and Dad, patient and kind. Having professional help meant I could focus on being their daughter again instead of just their caregiver. 1 year after that terrible Thanksgiving, life had stabilized into something resembling normalcy. Dad's health had actually improved with the reduction in stress. Mom's dementia continued progressing, but she seemed happier, more content. She didn't remember most of the drama, which was perhaps a blessing. She knew she was safe, knew she was loved, and that was enough. They never mentioned Bethany anymore. Sometimes I wondered if Dad thought about her, if he mourned the relationship they could have had, but he never spoke of it. I'd started dating again too, something I hadn't thought possible during the darkest days of the battle. Patrick Sullivan, a physical therapist I'd met at the hospital, asked me out for coffee. He was kind, patient, and understood about my responsibilities to my parents. We took things slowly, but there was genuine connection there, the possibility of a future I'd given up hoping for. Willa joked that I deserved some happiness after everything I'd been through. She was right. I did deserve happiness. I'd fought for it, earned it through standing firm in the face of terrible attacks. 2 weeks before the second Thanksgiving after the courtroom battle, a letter arrived. It was addressed to me in handwriting I recognized immediately. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it, my hands trembling slightly. The return address wasn't Bethany's apartment but belonged to someone named Rita Holloway, probably a friend helping her circumvent the restraining order. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. I needed to know what Bethany had to say after a year of silence. The letter was 6 pages long, handwritten on cheap notebook paper. It rambled between apology and accusation, between self-pity and self-awareness. Bethany wrote that she'd been jealous of me our entire lives, that watching Mom and Dad praise me for my nursing career while she struggled with her marriage had eaten away at her. She claimed that always loved me more, always favored me, and that she'd spent decades trying to earn affection that came so easily to me. She admitted the house situation had triggered something in her, a feeling that she was being rejected and replaced by the perfect daughter. She said she'd been desperate financially, and had made terrible choices out of panic and fear. Parts of the letter seemed genuinely remorseful. She acknowledged that her actions had been cruel and destructive. She admitted filing the false reports, creating the social media campaign, and engineering the financial attacks. She said she'd been in therapy and was working on understanding why she'd become so consumed by jealousy and entitlement. She wrote that she understood why I couldn't forgive her, why our parents had cut her off, and that she accepted she'd destroyed her own family through her choices. But then the letter would shift back into blame and justification. She'd write that I should have shared the house with her anyway, that I'd always been selfish, despite appearing generous. She'd claim that if our parents had just been fair and split everything equally, none of this would have happened. She'd suggest that I'd manipulated the situation to my advantage, even if I didn't realize it. The letter ended with a request to see our parents one more time before they died, to have a chance at reconciliation, to prove she'd changed. She promised she wasn't after money or property anymore. She just wanted her family back. I showed the letter to Preston Walsh first for legal advice. He confirmed it was technically a violation of the restraining order since it was an indirect contact, but prosecuting it would be more trouble than it was worth. He advised documenting it and filing it away. I discussed it with Aunt Corinne, who'd maintained some distant contact with Bethany through mutual acquaintances. Corinne said Bethany seemed genuinely broken, that she'd lost everything, and was struggling with depression and regret. But Corinne also warned that Bethany still hadn't fully taken responsibility, still blamed others for consequences of her own actions. I asked my parents. Leonard's response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. She made her choices. She said terrible things, did terrible things, and showed us who she really is. I don't want to see her. His voice was hard in a way I'd never heard before. Judith, in one of her confused states, asked, "See who, honey?" When I explained about Bethany wanting to visit, she just looked puzzled. Do I know a Bethany? The dementia had erased her eldest daughter from her memory, which broke my heart in a different way. I spent a session with my therapist Alma, discussing the letter. She helped me work through my complicated feelings. Part of me wanted to believe Bethany had changed, wanted to give her a chance at redemption. That's the part of me that had loved my sister for 32 years, that remembered good moments alongside the bad. But Alma gently pointed out the patterns in the letter. The way Bethany still couldn't fully own her behavior, still found ways to blame me and our parents for her choices. True change requires full accountability, Alma said. Until Bethany can accept complete responsibility without qualification or blame, reconciliation isn't safe for you or your parents. I made my decision. I wrote a brief response, mailed it through Preston so there'd be legal documentation. I told Bethany that I appreciated parts of her letter but that reconciliation wasn't possible right now, maybe not ever. I explained that our parents' health and peace of mind had to be the priority. I acknowledged that our family situation was complicated and painful for everyone involved. But I also made clear that the restraining order would remain in place and that any further contact attempts would be prosecuted. I wished her well in her therapy and healing, but I ended with finality. This chapter was closed. The second Thanksgiving after the battle was completely different from the first. The guest list was smaller but infinitely warmer. My parents, Aunt Corinne, Uncle Randall, Patrick, Willa and her husband, and 2 kids. We gathered around the same oak table where Bethany had exploded in rage a year earlier. But the energy couldn't have been more opposite. There was laughter, genuine conversation, and a sense of peace that had been missing from family gatherings for as long as I could remember. Patrick helped me in the kitchen, stealing kisses when no one was looking, making me laugh with terrible dad jokes even though he wasn't a father. Willa's kids played with Dad, showing him their toys and listening raptly to his stories from when he was young. Mom wandered in and out of lucidity, sometimes clear and present, sometimes confused about where she was, but always smiling. She seemed happier than she'd been in years, responding to the love and safety that filled the house. As we sat down to eat, Uncle Randall said grace. He thanked God for family, for second chances, for the courage to stand up for what's right even when it's hard. He specifically thanked me for my sacrifices and dedication. I felt tears prick my eyes but blinked them back. Dad reached over and squeezed my hand with his good hand. "We have the family we need right here," he said. Looking around the table, someone mentioned Bethany briefly, a passing reference to "I wonder how she's doing." Leonard shook his head sadly but didn't elaborate. Judith asked, "Who are we talking about?" Then, not waiting for an answer, she smiled at Patrick and said, "You're a nice young man. Are you going to marry my daughter?" The table erupted in laughter, and the awkward moment passed. After dinner, I found myself standing in the kitchen, washing dishes and looking out the window at the backyard where I'd played as a child. Patrick came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, leaning back against him. "I'm good. Really good, actually." And I was. For the first time in over a year, I felt completely at peace. The house was mine, officially and legally. My parents were safe and cared for. I had people around me who genuinely loved and supported me. I had a career I was good at and a potential future with a wonderful man. The story of what happened with Bethany would always be part of my history. The scars from that battle wouldn't disappear completely, but I'd learned so much through the experience. I'd learned that standing up for yourself matters, even when it costs you relationships. I'd learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you through the hard times. I'd learned that entitlement destroys people, that believing you deserve something just because you exist leads to bitterness and destruction. I'd learned that sacrifice and service, while difficult, create meaning and purpose that acquisition never could. I thought about Bethany sometimes, wondered if she was okay, if she'd ever find peace or healing. Part of me hoped she would. Despite everything, I didn't wish her harm or suffering. I just wished we could have been different people, had different relationships, made different choices, but we couldn't change the past. We could only live with the consequences of our actions and try to do better going forward. The most important lesson I learned was about inheritance itself. Bethany had been so focused on what she'd inherit, on the material value of the house and property, that she'd destroyed her relationships and her character in pursuit of it. She'd believed that being the oldest, being the firstborn, entitled her to more. She'd never understood that true inheritance isn't about money or property or who gets what when parents die. True inheritance is about values passed down, lessons learned, relationships built, and the person you become through your choices. My real inheritance from my parents wasn't this house worth $750,000. It was the work ethic my father demonstrated throughout his career. It was the compassion and kindness my mother showed to everyone she met. It was the understanding that love is a verb, something you do, not just something you feel. It was the knowledge that showing up matters, that being present in the hard moments defines character more than being there for the celebrations. Bethany had been right about one thing, though not in the way she meant it. At that explosive Thanksgiving dinner, when she'd screamed, "You get nothing," she was actually prophesying her own future. She got nothing because she gave nothing. She demanded everything but offered little in return. She wanted the rewards of relationships without doing the work of relationships. In the end, she lost her family, her marriage, her home, her reputation, and her peace of mind. She got nothing because she chose greed over love, entitlement over service, resentment over gratitude. I got everything because I gave everything. I gave my time, my energy, my career advancement, my social life, my comfort and convenience. I gave 6 years of my life to caring for parents who needed me. Not because I was trying to earn an inheritance, but because it was the right thing to do, because they needed help and I had the ability to provide it. The house was a result of those choices, not the motivation for them. That distinction mattered enormously. Standing in my kitchen as the evening wound down, I realized something profound. I didn't need Bethany to understand or accept or approve. I didn't need her apology or her acknowledgement that I'd earned this house. I didn't need reconciliation or closure from her. I'd found closure within myself by knowing I'd made the right choices, stood up to bullying and lies, and protected the people I loved. That was enough. Patrick and I helped my parents get ready for bed. Dad needed assistance with his nighttime routine, medications that had to be taken in a specific order, exercises to prevent his condition from worsening. Mom needed to be reminded where the bathroom was, needed her own medications, needed reassurance that she was safe in her own home. These tasks that used to feel burdensome now felt like privileges. I got to care for the people who'd raised me, who'd sacrificed for me when I was young. The circle of care completing itself felt right and good. After everyone left and the house was quiet, I walked through each room, touching walls and furniture. This house held so many memories. My childhood, learning to walk in that hallway, family dinners around that table, Christmas mornings by that fireplace. Now it held new memories too. The battle I'd fought and won, the people who'd stood by me, the love that had carried us through the darkest times. These walls had witnessed betrayal and loyalty, hatred and love, destruction and resilience. The house was more than structure and property. It was a living record of choices and consequences. I ended my walk in my bedroom, looking at the framed photo on my nightstand. It showed me and my parents from just last week, all three of us smiling in the backyard on a beautiful autumn afternoon. Mom was having a good day, clear-eyed and present. Dad looked stronger than he had in months. I looked genuinely happy. The stress and fear from the previous year finally faded from my face. This photo represented victory, not in destroying my sister, but in surviving her attempts to destroy me. Sleep came easily that night, deep and dreamless and peaceful. No anxiety about what attack might come tomorrow. No fear about losing everything I'd worked for. No guilt about defending myself and my parents. Just peace and gratitude and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd stood firm when tested, had remained true to my values when it would have been easier to surrender. The universe has a strange way of balancing scales. Bethany started with everything: the favored position, the wealthy husband, the beautiful house, the perfect life everyone envied. She ended with nothing because she'd learned nothing, grown in no meaningful way, and damaged everyone she supposedly loved. It started from a place of sacrifice and service, expecting no reward beyond knowing it'd done the right thing. I ended with everything that truly matters: integrity, character, genuine relationships, inner peace, and yes, a home I'd earned through love. If you've stayed with me through this whole story, thank you. If you've dealt with family betrayal, toxic relationships, or battles over inheritance, I hope my experience helps you feel less alone. Here is what I want to ask you. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who felt entitled to something you earned? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with anyone who might be dealing with similar family drama. Sometimes just knowing someone else survived it helps us find the courage to survive it too. Remember that family relationships are complicated. Sometimes the right thing to do is walk away. Sometimes standing your ground means losing people you love. That's incredibly painful, but it's not your fault. You're not responsible for other people's choices, only your own. Choose integrity over convenience. Choose truth over peace at any cost. Choose to protect the people who can't protect themselves. Choose love that's active and present, not love that's just words without action. To everyone watching who's in the middle of their own battle right now, you're stronger than you know. Keep documenting everything. Get good legal help. Surround yourself with people who genuinely support you. Don't let bullies win through exhaustion or intimidation. Stand firm in your truth. The storm will pass, and when it does, you'll emerge knowing exactly who you are and what you're made of. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope your own Thanksgiving, whenever you celebrate, is filled with genuine love and gratitude. I hope your family, whether blood or chosen, brings you joy instead of drama, and I hope you always remember that what you inherit matters far less than who you become. Be the kind of person who earns respect through character, not demands it through entitlement. That's the real inheritance worth passing on. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.